Hey, what's going on? Coach Luca here from Big Round Fitness and Performance, and today we're gonna go over fillers. The thing is, I don't even like calling them that because fillers kind of sound like a lesser thing. You know, we're gonna fill time with this, but if you've ever, if you watch my videos before or even my training, you'll notice that, during strength training exercises or maybe explosive power exercises, in between, I do things like core activation drills or a hip mobility drill with breathing, or like I said, a number of different exercises, and I get asked quite a lot, like, what are those? Why do you do those? And so I wanted to go over 7 big reasons, and maybe I'll find some more as I'm going along with this, 7 big reasons on why to do fillers and how they're so powerful to add them into the training programs, okay? So, like I said, they can be used in many different ways, and I'll touch on some of them. I'll show you guys examples in a little bit for different movement patterns, what could be a great option, although there's a lot of different options. But the number one, at least for me, and what I've found with training, a lot of different populations, from the highest, most elite athletes to kids to, I would say, people that have goals from reducing pain to dropping weight and body fat, body composition, building muscle, is reducing threat. And we'll talk about what threat means, but then also feeling better. And I underline feel because remember, how a person feels really dictates a lot of times too how they're gonna do a lift. Do they tense up? Is there a threat in the system? If somebody's afraid of a lift, because they got injured in it before, they feel icky, they're gonna be under threat, and that's gonna influence the way that they lift, right? Because their body might restrict range of motion, it might create less power production or force production, right? And feel better and feel safer. So if we can do an exercise that allows the person to feel better, feel safer when they do a lift, it's reducing threat. And I wanted to start there because I'll just do one example, right? If somebody's, for instance, doing a lunge, or let's just take a lunge for example, right? And they step back, and when they step back, they're feeling their knees somewhat, they're kind of extended, right? And they're going down and like, oh man, my knee's hurting. And as a filler, we end up doing like a couch stretch. So imagine I'm on the ground, back foot is on the chair. So pretend that this is obviously a chair, right? We're engaging glutes, we're breathing, we're putting our rib cage down, and then we're getting a stretch in that quad rectus femoris, maybe even doing a pelvis and rails, right? So we get some core work, we maybe even do a plank as a filler, right, in between the exercise. And now when they do the lunge, it's like, oh wow, I feel better. I can extend my hip more, right? My rib cage is in a better position. Now I feel my leg more, not my low back or my knee, or, right? Depending on obviously the person. We made them feel better, made them feel safer. We reduce threat. They're gonna get more out of it, and it also does, this, which we'll come to like at the end, which is right here, connection and buy-in. Buy into the program, buy into what you're doing. And like I said, if you're watching this and this is your own training, I mean, you can buy into plugging these into your program. So that's a huge thing, like I said, because we talked about threat before and how getting somebody to feel safer in exercise is gonna get them better results. Obviously, they won't be beat up. They'll be more, I would say, intentional and focused on it, and they'll buy into the program, which we know. If somebody buys in to a certain training, they're gonna be more consistent with it, they're gonna be more intentional with it, they're gonna get better results. So to me, this is kind of almost like one of the bigger reasons. But from there, it's extra opportunities to work on weaknesses, movement, so quality movement and corrective exercise. So, take for example, we already are restricted with time for training. Whether, like I said, me as a coach, I have 50 minutes or an hour, or maybe even an hour and a half, or if you're going to the gym and you only have so much time, and you need to work on things, and maybe you need to work on your thoracic rotation, right? Maybe you need to work on thoracic extension or, glenohumeral joint control. And you only have so much time, right? You can't have a 20-minute warm-up, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But we want to work on, like, hey, what's your weakness, right? Maybe hip extension, or working on your glutes, or, getting into a better neutral spine position. Quality movement, right? Maybe, like I said, your hips are tight and you can't move well and squat well and so on and so forth. And just corrective exercises. I mean, just about anybody that we see, and even like me personally or anybody else, always has things to work on, right? For me right now, it's a little bit of back issue, so I have to do specific drills to be able to I would say, feel better and train better. Well, where do we fit those in if we only have so much time? So it gives me an extra opportunity to work on that, because if I do, for example, I do a squat and then I do a box drill in a contrast set, and then in between that drill, I can also work on something that's not connected to that exercise, but legitimately I could be working on, quality external rotation and teaching that, I would say, humerus to rotate nicely inside of that socket, or upward scapular rotation, because we're working on shoulder health, right? And I get to plug that in there, and it doesn't take away any time from the session, because that would have been a break, right? You would have been just resting for maybe 2 minutes in that situation, 2.5 minutes in that situation, but we're actually working. We got an extra opportunity to work on these things in here, okay? Number 3 is improving training effectiveness and efficiency, less warm-ups. Now look, I think warm-ups are extremely important, but it goes back to this. If I come in and I got an hour for a session, whether me as a coach or you going to the gym, the big box gym, you're like, listen, I got to get in and out in an hour. You got 10 minutes to warm up. Well, how do we get more of the things that we need in here? So I'm going to give you also an example of a deadlift. Let's say you have a deadlift day, right? We're doing a trap bar deadlift, and you're going to work up to, a heavy set of 4. Well, you're going to do a bunch of warm-up sets, right? So you're going to do 135 for maybe 6. And you go to 185, 225, 315. So let's say I'm going to work up to a 405-pound deadlift. I'm going to do 5, 6 ramp up. We call them ramp up warm-up sets. But now instead of just doing the set and just kind of like resting a little bit, changing the weights up, I can do an exercise, and then I can work on something that's going to improve my deadlift, going to make me feel better. Maybe it's going to be a plank and a side plank series. Maybe it's that couch stretch with a breathe out, right? So working up to my top set, I'm now making my training more effective and efficient, because I'm getting those exercises in, right? I'm doing a, hinged, I would say, lat pull down, getting that lat activation, getting some length in my hammies, or should say just, turning things on, and boom, I'm making it more effective and efficient. And it could be the same thing with the squat, with the bench, with anything else, right? Where in between sets, I'm working on things that make me not only feel better and safer, improve my performance, and it works on weaknesses and movements. Right? Just think about frequency. The way that we get better at things is that we frequently practice them in an intentional way, and we do it with quality. Bam, that's how we can do. Fillers do exactly that, right? And we can plug them in a lot of different places. Here's a big one that I don't think it's talked about enough. Slowing clients down. Now, if you've ever seen this, maybe you do this yourself, you might be like, this is me, right? But you're running from, for instance, when we do our small groups, our first block is usually a strength and power block, but we do it in a time capsule. Like, for instance, we might have a 14-minute time capsule. And in that time zone, the first block is strength and power. So we're going to do a strength exercise. And then, so for instance, a trap bar deadlift and maybe a scoop toss, right? An explosive scoop toss or a broad jump or something like that. But then I want them to rest enough before they go again. Now, some people, a lot of times they're like, go, go, go. Like, if I'm not feeling fatigued or feeling the tension, then I don't feel like I'm working hard enough. But when it comes to strength and power, we want the longer breaks, right? So instead of them going straight back to, trying to do the deadlift or the throw or whatever, we're gonna put in a filler here and maybe do, like I said, a Spider-Man lunge with a lizard, right? So we're in a Spider-Man lunge position, doing the lizard, and it's like, hey, listen guys, we're gonna do 4 reps per side with a breathe out. Now that's gonna slow them down by a minute and a half, but they're still gonna be working. So it's like, hey, I'm working on something, I have to do this. It's slowing you down. And a lot of times this happens with specific populations, sometimes with athletes, sometimes with women, right? Like where it's like, hey, I gotta go, right? And this gives us kind of like a block in, and this is great for groups. So we've done a lot of this, not only obviously in our semi-private, but our small group personal training, where we're kind of filling in all these kind of blanks right here, but as well as slowing people down when we're doing strength and power work. Number 5, this is a great one too, is like for deconditioned, right? For deconditioned clients, athletes, it's active recovery between sets. So if you're doing, for instance, a band monster walk or lateral band slide, or if we're doing straight leg raises with a band, we're still going to have some heart rate there. It's going to be an aerobic zone, right? So we can actually work on this active recovery where your heart rate is still up there, like not super high, but it's actually, I would say, still benefiting because we're building an aerobic base off of it. And this is another thing to think about. Somebody that's deconditioned, right, that's starting a new program, and maybe they're a beginner, or they're coming back from an injury, we can superset a one exercise with a filler exercise, and that's enough to get a stimulus and to obviously create a training effect. And I'll give you an example, right? Let's say we're doing Bulgarian split squats, okay? And instead of doing Bulgarian split squats and some type of push exercise, right? We're doing Bulgarian split squats and a Spider-Man lunge or a downward dog, okay? And that person is gonna have a heart rate, and it's already gonna be a training effect, okay? It's gonna be a training effect because of it. So now we can kind of knock out two birds with one stone, because we're not pushing them too hard to where they can't recover, or they're gonna get beat up, or the form breaks down. But we're putting in these fillers that end up being part of the program and is a superset. So it's knocking out two birds with one stone, because there's a training effect, and they're working on their weaknesses, and they're working on movement patterns and corrective exercises. So I love that, like I said, for whether it's a beginner or a deconditioned client. Number 6, this comes down to, I would say, more of a, if you run a gym, own a gym, or run programs, because like I said, in a big gym, if you go and do a filler, somebody might take your squat rack, right? So that might be a problem right there. But in a facility like ours, and if you're a coach, what it does is better flow of training. Okay, and we talked about this a little bit in small groups as far as like slowing things down. But I'll give you an actual example. So let's say we got a group, a large group of 16 or 15 or something like that, but we have 3 trap bars or 4 trap bars, and now I have 4 people trap bar deadlifting, right? And then after they trap bar deadlift, they do an upper body superset exercise or a contrast exercise. But then from there, they go and do a filler, and the filler might be a mobility drill, it might be a core stability drill, and it kind of breaks down so that there's a smoother flow from the gym. Same thing in semi-private training, right? Where it's like we're actually able to create a better flow so more people are not getting stuck on specific exercises. And that is a big deal, right? Like I said, because we want to look at training effectiveness, training efficiency, but also be in a real world. Like we're constantly, every week I'm training hundreds of people in team trainings in small groups, athletes, semi-private. We're having so many people come to the gym, and it's real world. Sometimes we'll have a small group and team training at the same time, and some athletes and semi-privates going. And this allows us to give a nice flow, because they're like, all right, great. Well, now you're gonna go and do, pec stretch with external rotation liftoff, and then you're gonna do this, and now it creates no bottlenecks within the strength exercises that we might be using, right? So something to consider here, because it's big, and it can be very, very effective, like I said, for any gym, like even bigger gyms, but certainly if you're running any type of groups programs, semi-private programs, team training programs. And I did this one last, although like this is such a big thing. It creates opportunities to connect. Now, every training session does that. But when we're doing a exercise drill like that, where, for fillers where we can coach it, like people, during like a trap bar deadlift or a power exercise, you're not talking to people and I would say being able to explain everything as they're doing reps. But during, for instance, a straight leg raise and you're coaching, you can get some feedback. You can explain how this is helping. Hey, how's that feeling? After you do this, how does the deadlift feel? Hey, how's the squat feel? Is your bench a little bit better? Yeah, like I don't feel that tension in my shoulder anymore when I did that drill, right? We're able to connect better. We have a couple more opportunities to connect and to get buy-in. And remember, buy-in is essentially like if people buy into the coaching, I would say the program, the framework that you've outlined for them, it's a massive, massive win. Because like a program on paper, if it can't be put into play, right, and people aren't believing, remember, belief is such an important factor when it comes to training results. If somebody believes in the program, believes in what you've outlined, believes in your coaching, they're going to do it more, I would say, intentionally, more consciously, and they're going to be more consistent with it. And guess what? That's going to get them better results, right? So being able to use those opportunities, and I've done this with groups where we have, I would say, even an assistant coach, and I'm with the group that's doing a filler, and I'm able to relate the filler and what they're doing back to their goal. For example, all right, guys, listen, right now we're doing this couch stretch with a breathe out. Notice when you breathe out, exhale fully, your ribs come down. You're in a better position. So now, in this position, you're going to be able to have more hip extension, strength, and power, which is going to transfer over to your jump and your sprint when you're doing lateral slides in basketball. Like because if they want to be faster on their feet when they're doing lateral slides or they want to jump higher. I'm going to relate that, right, back to what they want. I'm going to relate that back to their goals. And it's like, okay, man, like we're doing this and this because it's going to make me get what I want. And now imagine if I'm doing that multiple times per session with every person, right? Every time I train them, we're reinforcing this, and then the buy-in goes up, right? The buy-in goes up. And the more buy-in goes up, the better results you get with clients, with teams, with everything else. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take a little quick break, and we're going to come back, and I'm going to show you some examples if we wanted to do fillers, for example, for a deadlift, right? Now, obviously, you can do this for any exercise, any lift. Like, there's so many variations and options, and I'll talk about this a little bit. But we're going to show an example of a deadlift, a squat, maybe even a bench, just to show how you can plug those in. All right, guys, so now I want to kind of kick into just 2 different examples. Now, we can make a list of exercises forever long, right? From hip thrusts to chins to, like, you name it. But just obviously 2 exercises that are kind of pop up and are big exercises that we can think about. One is deadlifts, right? Think about deadlifts and it's like, okay, well, what do we need, right? What do we need for deadlifts? Well, we need thoracic spine extension, right? If we have to have good T-spine extension, okay? We have to have a good hip flexion. And the thing is too, like hip, whether it's hip flexion, whether it's hip extension, and we'll go over like what are some different exercises you can do that, right? For like sumo deadlifts, right, this wider stance deadlift, we need some adductor length, right? Most people's adductors, this groin area is tight, so we need that. So we could obviously use fillers to improve that in between, okay? Scapular posterior tilt, right? So when we have a deadlift, we want to have that posterior tilt of the scapula, and that's very difficult to do if we have that upper back kyphosis. So a number of things that we could work on there, obviously, is working on that thoracic extension, good neck position, right? Turning on the lats. I'll show you guys a drill for that. Then lumbopelvic core stability. You'll see this a lot on deadlifts, trap bar deadlifts, right? When somebody goes down into that position and they don't have that good pelvic and I would say hip stability, that combination, and they might roll out of it, right? Or they'll roll out of it because we don't have that stiffness. Okay, so how do we work on that, right? How do we work on that as a filler? Maybe turn some things on, neurologically get a better pattern. And then glute activation position, back to position, right? We want to have good, if we have crappy positions, we're not gonna have a good lift. But if we have good positions, right? Neutral spine, pack, chin, right? I would say hip over knee, shoulder over hip, so on and so forth, like we're gonna be able to have a much, much better lift. So just some examples of what could we do as a filler to improve these, right? Well, right here is one is bench T-spine mobilizations where we can go here on the bench. You guys have maybe seen me do this drill, which is also a good drill for instance, a bench press, right? Where we're gonna go almost like a curl position, and then I'm gonna push my hips back. And as I push my hips back, I'm gonna curl because I wanna get the lat stretch, the tricep stretch. I'm gonna exhale. And I'm gonna breathe in through my nose into my upper back. Hit again. And then come back up. And I do that maybe for 5 to 6 reps. So what I'm doing is I'm stretching the lats, stretching the tricep, I'm having good position. And then when I exhale, I get my ribs down. When I inhale, I get air into my upper back and it mobilizes my upper back, my thoracic area to get more extension, right? So that's a great drill. And like I said, this is just one example, right? There's we could be on I would say Dynaball, and this is a kind of like a FRC drill where we extend the spine just over that segment, right? And hold that position with a good neck position and then come back down, right? So think of me being on the floor over a Dynaball, boom. There's a number of drills that we can fit into here. I just wanted to give you guys some examples. So if we go hip flexion here, guys have seen me do the bretzel. I'll just give an example of a bretzel. A bretzel actually does a number of things because we're laying down here on the ground. It actually works on our thoracic rotation as well. So I'm gonna have like a good neck position here. I'm gonna grab the back foot, right? I'm gonna push this knee down. My belly button's gotta face that way, right? And it has to keep facing that way. I'm gonna create some tension, so I'm gonna try to push this knee up, push this foot forward, right? So I'm gonna, for 5 seconds, creating that tension, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Now I'm gonna exhale, and get that rotation. And I do it again, right? So I create tension, 5 seconds as much as I can, exhale, get more rotation. And I wanna make sure that belly button keeps facing that way. So now I'm getting thoracic rotation extension. I'm getting more hip extension with some activation, right? So that could be one of them. One that I love is also a Spider-Man lunge, where we're actively working on, so this back knee is locked out, this knee is pushing forward actively, this heel is punching back, right? And I'm just getting long in my spine, and I'm legitimately thinking it's not a passive position, so I'm pushing this forward, I'm punching that heel back, I'm creating that hip separation, this glute's firing, I'm pushing my hands into the ground, so I'm getting that core activation, just a good position, right? And we might switch those up 3 times, and that might be one of the combo exercises that we do there, right? Sumo for the adductor length that we talked about. I love these adductor rock backs, right? So we're on all fours right here. We're gonna rock back, get that adductor length. You know, we could even add that opposite thoracic rotation here, okay? We can also create hip swivels here, right? Where we're keeping that neutral spine and we're swiveling, external rotation here. I heard a pop. See, you get like a lot of stuff that can get put in the right place here, right? And I could do these on a sumo as I'm doing, like I said, fillers, so that the next set is better, right? Where I'm working on things that I need to work on. Lumbo-pelvic stability, core stability. Think about an RDL or a deadlift, right? Where we have this hinge position. Well, we can work on core, and I'm gonna do this straight band raise, or should I say a band pull right here, dead pug position, or should I say, sorry, we're gonna go both straight up, like right there, and then we're gonna go, right? I got that rib cage down, core is working, and I'm getting that straight leg raise, which is a pattern of that hinge, right? So let's say we did 6 per side, other side, pulling. Right, so just another example where we're working core. We're actually doing, I would say, core, and we're getting that hammy length. And things like hollow holds, planks, so RKC plank, I'm on the floor, I'm driving the floor down. So actually, let me get down on the floor and do that one real quick. All right, so I'm here, driving that floor down, keeping that neck packed, rib cage pulls down, right, creating that tension, which essentially for somebody that's, you know, extending their deadlift, if we can get them to get here, that's gonna help. And that's helped a lot of times as fillers. And we'll do different series of that. Like I said, there's plenty of examples of what we can do here, but here, that's some for you to choose from. Like I said, if you go to, you know, my hip mobility videos on YouTube, you'll get tons of different ideas and examples of what we do. Also, if we go to squats, okay, once again, what are the things needed for squats? Well, we need ankle dorsiflexion, right? If we don't have good ankle mobility and dorsiflexion, we're gonna kind of get blocked here. Our hips are gonna fly back. I'm usually gonna round my low back and collapse, right? So that's an important thing, okay? Hip flexion, in addition to hip internal rotation. So think hip internal rotation is this, right here, right? We need that to be able to squat well, because that hip is gonna internally rotate inside of the femur when we're going down into that squat, okay? From there, T-spine extension, same thing, right? Imagine, now we don't do a ton of barbell back squats. We like the safety squat bar. But if I gotta get behind the bar, I have to be able to have good thoracic extension so that I'm not extending from my low back, right? Because that's not gonna be a good thing. And then shoulder mobility, same thing. I have to have external, think about this. If I get under the bar, especially with the barbell, I have to be able to externally rotate my shoulder, right? Because otherwise, I'm flying forward, not good things are gonna happen here, okay? And then once again, core stability for everything, right? That lumbo-pelvic connection has to be there. So let's just look at some stuff, okay? Ankle dorsiflexion, actually, it's the wrong one up, but dorsiflexion, we can have a bunch of different ankle mobility drills, which, you know, think about, you guys have seen me do this, where if there's a wall here, I'm pushing my ankle against the wall, driving that forward. But what I really love too, move these suckers, is like these calf stretches with pails and rails. So imagine I'm doing a toe raise here, and then I'm going down into a calf stretch, right? And once I'm down in that calf stretch, I'm trying to pull my toes, or should I say pull my ankle towards my shin actively. 5, 4, 3, 2, ooh, there we go, releasing, 1, and back up. And then back down again, right? And again, 5, and I'm pulling it. So imagine that like now, obviously, I'm gonna go deeper and deeper. I'm hanging on to this, into that stretch, and I'm pulling my foot towards my shin. So now I'm getting some neural, I would say, ooh, tension there. And you can actually see it dropping, right? Boom. Again, so let's say I'm doing that 3 to 5 reps. Well, guess what? If I'm going back into a squat, now, I mean, that already feels better dorsiflexion, right? So that's gonna be my filler. And there's a bunch of different things that we can do for the ankle. Obviously, we love FRC. From there, hip flexor mobilizations with internal rotation. So this is one of those ones that I've talked about before, right? Our couch stretch. But now imagine that our couch stretch, not only, okay, so I'm feeling that stretch here in the quad, okay? I'm getting my ribs down, pushing down here. But now I'm also gonna go and turn out and then turn that hip in. So I'm actually turning this hip in a little bit, internally rotating it. Right, so I'm stretching, but I'm also internally rotating. Right, and I can exhale to get those ribs down, makes it even better. So that's a great filler. We love our, I would say, hip cars, right? So another place where we can do good fillers is do our standing hip cars, or we could do these seated on the ground, right? I'm going up here, I'm internally rotating as much as I can. Now I'm going back into extension, keeping those ribs down, tension everywhere, speeding this up a little bit, right? And we're working that. We can also do end range isometrics for that, I would say, knee and hip flexion, right? So should I say, I'm gonna go, think about this. This is the bottom of a squat position. So now I'm gonna do end range iso holds, abs on, and 3, 2, 1, and I'm holding it, right, for 10 seconds, 2 sets of 10 seconds. That can be a filler because getting somebody then to pull themselves down into that squat might feel a lot better, right? If you guys have also seen me do drills where I attach a band and now I'm actively pulling that knee up with the band attached to the bottom, same thing. I can cue somebody and say, hey, listen, the way that you pull that band up is the way I want you to pull yourself, I want you to feel that pulling yourself down into a squat. Not only are we like working on weaknesses, hip flexor strength, we're also turning things on, creating patterns, just improving those things, right? From there, like a seated 90-90 hip switch is great. Love that 90-90 position, right? So here, also cueing, right? So belly buttons and sternum are facing that knee. I'm here, abs on, really feeling that internal rotation here. And then I'm gonna switch. Right, and from there we can add a lot of stuff. Like I said, I'm kind of going through this a little faster because we can add kin stretch going into that hip flexion glute, okay? We can open these up and do isometrics in a bear position. Right, so now think about this, right? Our break, so we're doing a strength exercise. In between a break, we're doing a minute of this rather than doing just a 2-minute or a 2.5-minute break between those exercises. A lot of benefit coming out of that. Side lying open book is, you know, you can call it that, call it the windmill. Once again, opening up that thoracic spine. We can go actually, let's go this position right here. Reaching. Pushing that knee down. Right now I'm getting that thoracic rotation extension. I can even breathe in this position. This is another one, I didn't even mention it, but like a lot of these will work well too for especially the upper body, for instance, for like a bench, right? For most people that, you know, you're on your phone all day, you're working here all day, and then what do we want to do? We want to extend, we want to open up, right? Because if you're coming in and benching, whether it's dumbbell, kettlebell, barbell, whatever it is, right? If we can get these clavicles ripped apart, activate that upper back, so doing face pulls, doing band pull aparts, right? Stretching, or should I say, soft tissue release on the pecs, doing drills where we're getting this rotation, this extension, your bench instantly feels better, right, doing those fillers. And same thing, you know, with, like I said, core activation drills, or imagine a pec stretch with an end range liftoff. So if I was up against the wall and I'm opening up and pushing away and feeling that stretch, and now once I feel that stretch, end range, imagine now, ribs down, I'm feeling everything in the back side of this, and then I'm gonna do an end range liftoff external rotation. And then go again, pack it down, push away, get that stretch. Oh boy, do I feel that, right? But what does that do? Think about that, right? When we get under the barbell, that's what we need to have. Now, maybe somebody's not ready for that, but these are just examples of, you know, because we could go for each one of these different drills. And remember, these are drills associated with improving the lift or what we need there. But it could also be, you know, things that, like if we're doing lower body and just plugging in drills that help you, you know, with something else, with upper body, right? Things that you need. Remember what we talked about, like weaknesses, improving movement patterns, corrective exercises, all of those can be fillers, and there's, you know, no golden rule to it, right? Is this gonna help you with your stability, with your mobility, with your lift, you know, improving performance, helping you feel safer, getting more reps and frequency with the stuff that you need to work on? And if the answer is yes, you're winning. So imagine like what I would recommend for you to do for every single lift. If you have issues, you know, bench press, right? What you need, and then the exercises that go along with it, right? So, you know, for single leg work, I love, like, you know, I would say balancing single leg, right? Also side planks to engage obliques, because a lot of times when obliques aren't working or firing right? And then of course there's coaching cues to that as well, but like what are the drills that you can do to improve those lifts and have a toolbox of that, right? Plug those in, like I said, through your own training, through your own lifts, implement it, and let me know how it feels. All right, so now that like you saw some of these drills being implemented for specific movement patterns, try it the next time that you're training, right? So if you got a squat session, if you got a deadlift session, if you got a bench session, whatever it is, and just think in terms of, you know, what is the thing that you want to improve? What is the weak link? You know, what makes you feel better, right? Is there specific drills you do in warm-ups, but like you just can do only a couple of them, and you could do them as fillers as well? Try that out, and I would say plug it into your thing. And one of the examples, and this is just a story that pops to mind, is one of our NFL guys, Phil Haynes, where he had some issues with, you know, he had a surgery on adductor and whatnot, tough time, I would say, turning the glutes on. We do like a little mini filler circuit, right? So we would do a Spider-Man lunge, I would say RF stretch. So I would stretch him in his rectus femoris position, open up that quad, and then from there we'd go into a plank, RKC plank hold, so turn on core, and then we do an isometric glute bridge where I would resist him, right? So 3 exercises, and from there he'd go into a trap bar deadlift, and it would feel so much better, and the right muscles would turn on, right? Obviously there was coaching and cueing from there too, but even for him, he felt better, right? Safer, the threat went down, he could get in better positions, and because of that, the lift and the reps afterwards were better. So think about how the stuff that I just showed you guys, you can implement, and if you go through, like I said, my YouTube videos, like you guys can check out different protocols for hip mobility, shoulder mobility, you know, I would say knee health, ankle mobility, and like take some of those exercises and plug them in as fillers. And like I said, as always, I will see you next time. Coach's Corner, back here, sharing tips. Peace out.